I have got some good news. After 8 seasons, CBS has finally decided to cancel the television series S.W.A.T. Okay, I know that sounds really mean, especially if you're a fan of S.W.A.T. And be sure, S.W.A.T. has its fans. So many, in fact, that CBS first tried to cancel the show at the end of season 6. And so many people wrote in demanding more that they brought it back for a 7th season. Then when they tried to cancel it at the 7th season, people started to write in again demanding more, and they brought it back for an 8th season. And it's easy to see why it has so many fans, because S.W.A.T. does a lot of stuff right. It has the best stunts on television, live in-camera stunts. It has diverse cast. It's got one of the few network shows that has a black lead in Shamar Moore, who plays Hondo Harrelson, the leader of the SWAT department. It wrestles with kind of complex issues, like it deals with police brutality. It has interesting ideas, such as one of the characters, Chris, is a bisexual, and I believe it's the 2nd season, she's in a throuple, and that storyline is treated with dignity and respect. In general, has well-drawn, interesting characters that go on character arcs and have development just like you would want from a good TV show. So why am I happy that a TV show that does things well and that people like is getting canceled? Well, it's because SWAT is about SWAT. It's about the Special Weapons and Tactics Division of the Los Angeles Police Force. And that is a problem. You see, SWAT is the worst example that I can think of in modern times of Copaganda. For those of you that don't know, Copaganda is a portmanteau of the word cop and propaganda. It's a word that we use to describe all sorts of things that try to present the police as a good and natural element of society. And even though the term Copaganda is fairly new, the concept of Copaganda is not. It's been around as long as professional police departments have existed in the United States of America. They first started popping up in Boston and New York and Chicago in the mid-19th century. People were skeptical or outright against the establishment of police forces. And this is covered. You can find this described in a lot of good places. I would recommend Mark Neocolis's A Critical Theory of Police Power and Alex S. Vitale's The End of Policing. These 2 books kind of cover this history really well. But essentially, Americans were very skeptical about the idea of a full-time professional police force. Because on the one hand, Americans in general don't like the idea of a standing army, at least up through the 19th century. If you've read the Declaration of Independence or other sort of early American documents, there's quite a bit in there about why standing armies are bad. The idea of a standing army who then impugns upon the rights of American citizens and polices American citizens. The Declaration of Independence is deeply concerned about that, and so were Americans in the mid-19th century when these police departments popped up. And then just the general idea that the police forces existed for 2 reasons. One, to protect private property, most of which, especially at that time, belonged to upper middle classes, and which, instead of paying for their own protection of their property, now got people to pay for it. And then, as Neocolis writes about in his writing, again, Critical Theory of Police Power is a good example of it, the police made things such as loitering illegal, which meant that it was kind of illegal now to not have a job. You were forced into the workplace to become a wage laborer. And so you can see that right from the beginning, when police forces came into play, they were mistrusted, they were seen as corrupt. And even though we're talking about before radio or television or movies or any of these things, police forces immediately took to the media, newspapers, and fiction stories to start telling fabricated stories about the good things that they do. The book Pressing the Police and Policing the Press by Scott Memel is an excellent study on the history of this relationship. The police forces and individuals started to write these stories about how everything is safer when police are around, how police are a natural extension of the civil society. And the actual facts did not bear that out. And that's continued to be true all through the development of moving pictures. In the 1950s and the birth of television, you get Jack Webb, who had entered into an agreement with the police department to take their stories and turn them into quote-unquote true stories on the television show Dragnet. That became a huge hit, and that's continued only since then. I point out SWAT as a particularly egregious example because it's not just about police, and therefore kind of does the same thing that, Law & Order or NYPD Blue, The Rookie, all these other TV shows do, but it's specifically about highly militarized police. And so every episode of SWAT tries to make heroes out of people who bring military-grade weapons and armory against other American citizens. Every episode deals with this. We've got to break out Black Betty, which is what they call their armored truck. We got to break out Black Betty. We've got to get our highly trained professionals to come and take these weapons and take out the bad guys. Within the world of SWAT, the TV show, this is always against the worst of the worst. They fight terrorists, they fight drug runners, they fight the type of people who would hold a child hostage inside of a shopping market, which is, of course, what the SWAT department was invented to take on. When Daryl F. Gates created the SWAT department, the first one in 1960s, he pitched it as a response to the Texas shooter, in which a person climbed the water tower at University of Texas and just started killing random innocent people. That's terrifying. That's a perfect example of being unsafe. And Gates argued, disingenuously, I would say, but he still argued that the police were not equipped to be able to deal with that. And so he started advocating for heavily militarized police. That's gone from extreme situations to a norm, to that most police departments have a SWAT division. And the journalist Radley Balko's book, The Rise of the Warrior Cop, kind of traces this really well, and I recommend that book. But that's what's being played out on SWAT. This idea that we are constantly under fire from extraordinary situations that require heavily militarized officers. And again, it's incredibly compelling. It's not just that it's well acted and well produced, it's that it gets at things that we really care about. In the second season, for example, there's an episode called School, in which the SWAT team comes to take down a school shooter. And it's a bifurcated episode that takes place, I think there's a 10-year gap between the two shootings, but in the first case, they're able to stop the shooter before too many people get killed, and in the second case, they're able to stop a shooter before they kill anyone. In those cases, SWAT is a good thing. But if you pay attention to reality, first of all, the existence of SWAT tends to lead to more violence in real life. Secondly, we know that, for example, the existence of SWAT does not stop school shootings. In fact, the more officers that are armed on school campuses, the more violence there tends to be. SWAT is a TV show for everything that it does well, and it does a lot well, normalizes this and tells us that it's a good thing. And so, while I understand why people love it, I can't help but breathe a bit of a sigh of relief that SWAT is finally off the air.